LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the February 21st edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out 37 of the weekend's best clips for what should be a really educational show for you all tonight. But before I get to the other main topics, I want to speak briefly about copyright and the copyright threat that's currently against my channel. Last Friday, I uploaded a video to YouTube on the Where's the Fair Use campaign, and I put a link to that down in the video description if you're interested in that video and the whole fair use issue. And I briefly mentioned in there that I have a current claim against my video by CBS from last week's show. I didn't mention it was CBS, but it's from the CBS debate clip roundup I did at the beginning of last week's show, and I've gotten an email from CBS giving me till tomorrow to take the video down or face a DMCA takedown, I guess. So if that happens, I may lose features on my channel for 10 to 14 business days. So for a few weeks, possibly, I won't be able to live stream. I may not even be able to upload videos over 15 minutes. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work because, as I mentioned in that Where's the Fair Use video, YouTube has kind of been escalating the penalties for claims even when you're disputing them. So I don't know for sure if I'll be back on Sunday, or I was actually hoping this Thursday night or next Friday sometime to do one more debate clip roundup from the CNN debate, the Republican debate. Is it CNN? Yeah, well, there's one more. Yeah, there's a CNN debate this Thursday that I was hoping to do a clip roundup on. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, what the features of my channel will be, if I'll be able to talk CBS out of filing that takedown. You'll have to stay tuned to see how that turns out. But now I want to get to my regular clips from the Sunday morning shows. All the clips come from the Sunday morning news analysis shows because there was no HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher and no Saturday Night Live this weekend. So they all come from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. I do still have some CBS clips despite this threat against my channel. I use CBS clips every week, and from Face the Nation they don't seem to care, but from the CBS debate somehow that's more sacrosanct to CBS. We'll see what happens. But you can see the topics I'm going to cover listed down in the video description. If you're watching as a recorded show, I'll put time indexes down there so you can skip between the few different topics. After I already mentioned the brief copyright comment and the threat to my channel. The other three topics I'll be covering are the Democratic side of the 2016 presidential race with the results of the Nevada caucus from yesterday where Hillary Clinton won. Then I'll be covering the Republican side where they had their South Carolina primary yesterday and Donald Trump won, and it was almost a tie between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. And then I'll have one clip at the end about this fight between Apple and the US Justice Department about whether Apple should have to write software to unlock this iPhone that belonged to the San Bernardino terrorists, or at least one of them. That'll be the last clip at the end. Along the way, you'll see a couple things, especially in the Republican side. There's some notable, remarkable clips coming up. I have another Robo-Rubio malfunction this week. I think it's a little more blatant than last week, even though I made that into a separate clip. And one of the Donald Trump clips, I think I may have 9 Donald Trump clips at the end there, and one of them, he seems to almost be talking like a 9/11 truther, although I think there may be another explanation, which I will discuss when I get to that. But I want to start, like I said, with the Democratic side of the race, and I normally like to start with a little political comedy, and there's no Bill Maher, there's no Saturday Night Live, but luckily Bernie Sanders told a joke, and it's on a topic near and dear to my heart. So I thought I would start before I get to the general reports about what happened in Nevada on the Democratic side. I'm going to start with one clip of Senator Bernie Sanders making a joke in response to a question from Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press this morning here.
Her victory speech last night. I want to play a clip of it because it may sound familiar to you. Here it is.
Wall Street can never be allowed to threaten Main Street again. No bank can be too big to fail. No executive too powerful to jail.
It's pretty clear she has ratcheted up her rhetoric on Wall Street because of your candidacy. Do you see that as a victory of sorts, that you've got her trying to parrot your message.
We're looking into the copyright issues here. Those are our words. Well, obviously, I think what the Secretary has recognized is the American people are extremely angry about the power of Wall Street, the greed, the illegal behavior of Wall Street. And by the way, the fact that, you know, when a kid gets picked up with marijuana, that kid gets a police record. Wall Street executives destroy the economy. There's no prosecution against them. The American people understand that we need real change in this country. In my view, a political revolution which says to the people on top, you know what, you guys can't have it all.
You know, it's interesting.
Bernie Sanders made a copyright joke on my big copyright week, so I had to start off with that clip. I actually enjoyed that little copyright joke. Somehow I don't think Bernie Sanders knows about the Where's the Fair Use campaign on YouTube, but I guess he knows enough about copyright being a joke to make a copyright joke. So I also noticed he segued into his argument about the different justice system for rich people on Wall Street versus someone who gets picked up by the police for marijuana or something like that. And as I pointed out over and over again, if you want to know more about that, read this Matt Taibbi book, The Divide, which is basically about why how there is a different criminal justice system for the rich on Wall Street and then the poor people who get totally destroyed by the criminal justice system. So if you're interested in that topic, you can check out that book. And I'm going to move on now to a couple general reports about what happened on the Democratic side. First, also from NBC's Meet the Press, here's Chuck Todd going over the results from the Nevada caucus, and then a couple clips of Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton at the end of the night giving their speeches and how they both spun the results over here.
Hillary Clinton got the win she needed to blunt the Bernie Sanders momentum. Clinton beat Sanders 53-47, finally getting an unambiguous victory after that nail-biter in Iowa and, of course, that big loss in New Hampshire. Here are Clinton and Sanders as the results in Nevada became clear.
Tens of thousands of men and women with kids to raise, bills to pay, and dreams that won't die. This is your campaign.
I believe that when Democrats assemble in Philadelphia in July at that convention, we are going to see the results of one of the great political upsets in the history of the United States.
This morning, a packed show. We're going to hear from Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Bernie Sanders this morning.
So, yeah, that was a packed show on NBC's Meet the Press, and I actually have the most clips from Meet the Press. It's also the show I watch first, which I try to avoid the duplication of the clips. A lot of times, it's not just Marco Rubio who repeats the same talking points over and over again. A lot of these answers are duplicated. I think I only have Ted Cruz from one or two shows, and I skipped Marco Rubio on a couple shows. They both did 3 or 4 of the 5 shows, I think. But now I want to move on to the Fox News coverage of the Democratic caucus in Nevada. And it's a little bit different. There's a little bit of a spin there. You know, it is Fox News after all. Karl Cameron, who's not the most unbiased reporter. And, of course, he has to mention that Hillary Clinton is under FBI investigation. Like every story about Hillary Clinton has to mention that on Fox News, I think. And then when it comes to Bernie Sanders at the end, wait, I'm sorry, this isn't Karl Cameron. This is Ed Henry, who's actually a little better than Karl Cameron, but there's still some spin in here. Ed Henry's covering the Democrats for Fox News, and he does mention the FBI investigation, like I said. And then at the end, he says that Bernie Sanders has to show that he can win somewhere, kind of forgetting the fact that he had like a big win in New Hampshire, I think, over in this clip.
Look at the neon lights on the Las Vegas Strip. With the results from the Nevada caucuses, the race for the Democratic nomination is still tight. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry in the Silver State with the latest. Ed.
Chris, Hillary Clinton last night seized the momentum in this race and took a big step toward beating Bernie Sanders for the Democratic nomination. Yet there are still danger signs this morning for Clinton, obviously still under FBI investigation. And entrance polls show that for voters whose top concern was honesty and trustworthiness, Sanders crushed her 84% to 11%. Sanders also won big again with young people, made gains with Hispanics. However, Clinton won because of a huge edge with voters over 65 as well as African Americans, just as this race heads south. And Clinton, at her victory speech, immediately pounced on the idea that as this race goes to South Carolina next Saturday and then goes national in March, she will be able to grind out the delegates needed to seal this nomination.
I'm on my way to Texas. Bill is on his way to Colorado. The fight goes on. The future that we want is within our grasp. Thank you all. God bless you.
I believe that when Democrats assemble in Philadelphia in July at that convention, we are going to see the results of one of the great political upsets in the history of the United States.
Now, to Sanders' point, not all of the states on Super Tuesday, March 1st, are Clinton strongholds in the South. Some, like Massachusetts and Minnesota, quite friendly to him. Remember, also, Democrats award delegates proportionally, and Sanders has started out raising Clinton in the money department, so he has the ability to stick around. What Sanders has not proven, though, is that he can win. Chris?
Ed, thanks. And we're...
So, yeah, like I said, there's Ed Henry on Fox News Sunday saying that he's not sure Bernie Sanders has to prove he can win, even though he just won in New Hampshire. And there was that FBI investigation, as I also previously mentioned before the clip. Now I'm actually going to get to a whole bunch of Bernie Sanders clips. You know, usually I do this in the opposite way. I put the Republicans first and the Democrats second, and I save all the Bernie Sanders clips to the end. This time I'm saving all the Donald Trump clips to the end, except for that one Apple clip. And now I will have a big succession of Bernie Sanders clips. The first one is the one I took from CBS's Face the Nation, where John Dickerson asked him a question. I think if Bernie Sanders doesn't win South Carolina next Saturday, you'll hear this question a lot more. And this kind of has to do with what Bernie Sanders said in the clips you already saw about going all the way to the convention. The question is he going all the way to the convention to win, or is he going all the way to the convention to affect the message of the eventual nominee, who will be Hillary Clinton if he can't win in South Carolina or somewhere else soon. And here's how Bernie Sanders, he says he's in it to win it, but it could be that he's just going to be pulling Hillary Clinton's message more towards where we would like it to be, kind of like in the copyright joke I showed at the beginning. You can tell me what you think after you watch that clip here.
Judge the Sanders campaign. As you say, you've come a long way. Your message has influenced Hillary Clinton a great deal. But should people say, where are some big wins for Bernie Sanders? Or should they say, hey, this is a message campaign and let the message continue through the contests?
No, this is not a message campaign. We're in this race to win. And I think on Super Tuesday, for example, you're going to see some major, major victories. And, John, as you know, and I hope most people know, that these primary elections and caucus elections are proportional. And that means that it's not winner take all. For example, Hillary Clinton in Nevada got 19 delegates. We got 15 delegates. We're going to need 2,400 delegates to win. So it's a state-by-state process. We are going to win some big states, I think, on Super Tuesday.
In the CBS poll of Nevada caucus,
So that's the one clip, like I said, I'm going to show from CBS's Face the Nation interviewing Bernie Sanders. One of 3 CBS clips I have dangerously decided to include in this program, despite getting that email from the CBS legal department last Thursday. But I am going to show several more Bernie Sanders clips. The next several come from his interview on NBC's Meet the Press. I think these are all in order, minus the one that I took out for the beginning of the show as the political comedy, for the copyright joke that Bernie Sanders told. But this is actually the beginning of Chuck Todd's interview of Bernie Sanders, and you'll see he kind of introduces him, spinning it as his bad loss in Nevada, and then you'll see Chuck Todd even quotes one of Bernie Sanders' optimistic talking points before the Nevada caucuses about how the revolution was going to begin in Nevada, which seems kind of like a low blow, but it's a good confrontational journalist question, I guess, in some ways. Here it is from Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press this morning. Oh, and I think there's like a kind of disturbing laugh from Marco Rubio that got caught at the beginning of this clip. You can see here.
And now to the Democratic race, and a close but crucial victory for Hillary Clinton in Nevada yesterday, and a big blow for my next guest, Senator Bernie Sanders. Welcome back to Meet the Press, Senator.
Good to be with you.
Let me start with something you said on Friday. You said on Friday, it could be that 10, 20, 30 years from now, people will look back at what happened in Nevada and say, this was the beginning of the political revolution. Obviously, the results didn't turn out the way you thought. What happened, sir?
Well, what happened is, over the last 5 weeks, Chuck, we came from 25 points down to 5 points down. As I understand it, we actually won the Latino vote yesterday, which is a big breakthrough for us. But the voter turnout was not as high as I had wanted. And what I've said over and over again, we will do well when young people, when working class people come out. We do not do well when the voter turnout is not large. We did not do as good a job as I had wanted to bring out a large turnout.
You know, that the last minute.
So that's, I guess, a fairly good answer as far as politicians' spin on not winning goes. It's fairly accurate. It's not like too much puff. But the next question I want to show from that same interview of Bernie Sanders on Meet the Press, Chuck Todd actually asked about how Harry Reid and the Culinary Union, I hear some other unions, came in and did a lot of last-minute legwork for Hillary Clinton when it looked like Bernie Sanders might actually overtake her in Nevada. And later, Hillary Clinton only did one interview this morning over on CNN State of the Union, and I thought it was a fairly softball interview. And for example, Jake Tapper never asked anything about what you're about to see Chuck Todd ask Bernie Sanders on Meet the Press this morning over here.
Turnout.
You know, that the last minute, there were reports that Harry Reid and the Culinary Union were working to try to beef up turnout in places where Hillary Clinton was going to do well, including right there on the Strip in Las Vegas. Do you think that made a difference?
It's hard to say, but what I do know is, Chuck, that our message of a rigged economy in which people in Nevada and around this country are working longer hours for low wages, while almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. And I'll tell you something else. This issue of a corrupt campaign finance system where big money interests in Wall Street are trying to buy elections, those are the issues that are resonating. Again, I wish we had had a larger voter turnout. But by the way, we did phenomenally well with young people. I think we did well with working class people. Remember, we were taking on a candidate who ran in 2008. She knew Nevada a lot better than we did. She had the names of a lot of her supporters. So I'm proud of the campaign that we ran. Obviously, I wish we could have done a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I think she gets 19 delegates. We get 15 delegates. We move on to the next states.
You know, it's interesting listening to her.
So that's, like I said, that's another good spin from Bernie Sanders talking to Chuck Todd about not winning. But it's also, you know, it's not dishonest or inaccurate. The next part of the interview, I think, is actually where Chuck Todd asks about Hillary Clinton taking over his rhetoric and gets that copyright joke. So I'm not going to show that clip again, but I am going to move on to the next clip in the interview from Chuck Todd on Meet the Press that I think was one of the most interesting questions from all the programs, and it's an issue I think I saw Tucker Carlson bring this up on Fox News at the beginning of the results that of the South Carolina primary, that the big money super PAC, like Jeb Bush's big money super PAC, did not buy him the election, which is, you know, this is very provocative for many of my viewers who may know that I am not as against Citizens United as many people on the left. I do think money has too big an effect on politics, but although I think it's more the effect on our Congress when they're making the laws, and that does have to do with the fundraising and the bundling of money, but it's not so much these independent expenditures don't necessarily win someone the election, and having more money doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the election, especially if the lower spending candidate has a significant amount of money, just not as much as the winning candidate. If you have like a floor to work from, you can still win and not have the most money. And anyway, Chuck Todd kind of brings that up, talking to Bernie Sanders, and he accepts it a little, but still, of course, fights against that idea over in this clip.
The guy who had the biggest super PAC of all time had to drop out of the race. Jeb Bush outspent everybody. He arguably had more special interests supporting his candidacy. Isn't sort of the people already overturning Citizens United? Isn't your message and Donald Trump, who've done this without super PACs, isn't this already resonating?
No, well, in some ways it is, but I think, you know, if you look at Jeb Bush's campaign, it's more than just money. It's the nature of the candidate and the message and all that stuff. But let me give you an example. Right now, we have raised, as I understand it, Chuck, more contributions from people than Hillary Clinton has, but she's now going into the super PAC that she has, which comes from Wall Street and very wealthy individuals. She will be outspending us in the next number of weeks precisely because of that super PAC. Do these things matter? Yes, they do. Where are you going to win next?
Well, I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. If Bernie Sanders doesn't win, I don't think it's because of that extra $5 million that the Priorities USA or whatever that super PAC that's spending on behalf of Hillary Clinton is named. I don't think that's going to be what loses it for him. What's going to lose it for him is his inability to reach voters that are more diverse. He did okay with Latinos in Nevada, but lost African Americans really strongly, and he really needs to do better with the black voters in South Carolina if he wants to have a chance of winning there next Saturday. So I don't think it's the money. I think it could just be the old Hillary Clinton coalition, especially with the older voters. But I want to move on to one more question from NBC's Meet the Press for Bernie Sanders before I move on to the State of the Union interview with Jake Tapper. And in this last clip, you'll see Chuck Todd ask him a question that I think all the interviewers asked him, but like I said, I watched Meet the Press first, so I took the Meet the Press answer, and it's, you know, where are you going to win? He won in New Hampshire, but, you know, looking forward, where is Bernie Sanders going to win? Because he has to win in order to have a path to winning the nomination. And here's Bernie Sanders' answer to that question in this clip.
You've got to, you can't just come close. You're right, you came close in Nevada, but to win, you got to win. In Super Tuesday, can you win a majority of the delegates on Super Tuesday? You don't have to win a majority of the states, but you need to win a majority of the delegates if you're going to win this thing.
Right. Well, we're studying that issue very closely, obviously, as to where we allocate our resources and allocate my time. I think we have a good shot in Colorado, a good shot in Minnesota, a good shot in Massachusetts. I think we are looking pretty good in Oklahoma. The last poll I saw in my own state of Vermont had us at 80%, so I think we got a shot to win there. And I think we will surprise people in some other states as well.
Don't you have to beat her in a place like Texas or Virginia or Tennessee, a big state, to say, you know what, I can win this nomination. I can't just come close. Don't you have to do that?
No, you're right. Look, at the end of the day, what you're saying is true. You need delegates. And as you know, these are state-by-state proportional delegates go out. We're looking hard at Michigan. We think we have a pretty good shot at parts of Texas. So trust me, we are focusing very hard on trying to get as many delegates as we can. But let me also say this. We are in this race to the convention. I think we got some states coming down the pike that we're going to do very, very well in. I think, you know, if you look at national polling, our support is growing. So we think, Chuck, we have come a very, very long way. I think the first time I was on your show, we were probably at 5% in the polls. We're moving. We're making progress.
All right, Bernie Sanders, I know you're in South Carolina this morning, but this race goes national in a hurry. Thanks for coming on. Stay safe on the trail, sir.
Thank you.
And when we come back...
So those are the Bernie Sanders clips from Meet the Press, including the one I showed at the beginning of the broadcast. And now I'm going to move on to some of the questions he got asked by Jake Tapper over on CNN State of the Union. In this first clip, it's a little bit similar to that last one about where you're going to win, but it actually is more specifically about his problems with African American voters, and then talking about Latino voters in this follow-up question. But the beginning of the question actually starts with Jake Tapper doing an introduction where he says that Bernie Sanders last night refused to give up despite losing, and then you can see the question he asked Bernie Sanders and the answer over in this clip.
Let's turn back to that contentious Democratic race where Bernie Sanders conceded in a phone call to Hillary Clinton last night. But on stage, he refused to call it defeat, and he promised the fight would go all the way to the convention floor.
I believe that when Democrats assemble in Philadelphia in July at that convention, we are going to see the results of one of the great political upsets in the history of the United States.
And Senator Bernie Sanders joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. The big question coming into Nevada was whether you could do well with non-white voters, and you seem to do well with Latinos. But Hillary Clinton, to be frank, cleaned your clock with African-American voters. Is that a concern going into South Carolina, where they are a majority of the Democratic electorate?
Well, it is a concern, Jake, but let's remember this. 4 or 5 weeks ago, if I was on your show, you would have noted that I was 25 points behind in the polls in Nevada. We ended up losing by 5 or 6 points. I believe we won the Latino vote, which is a huge, huge way forward for us. We did badly with the African-American vote, but I think the more the African-American community hears our message on a broken criminal justice system, which has more people in jail today than any other country on earth, largely African-American and Latino, when they hear our message about the need for an economy that represents all of us, not just the 1%, I think you're going to see us making progress there as well.
I don't know if you heard, but earlier in the show, Hillary Clinton disputed the idea that she didn't win the Latino vote. She said that that's not according to their analysis of the numbers.
Well, that is according to, who knows, the answer is. But according to analyses that I have seen, that is the case. And nationally, it is clear that we are doing better and better with Latino voters. We started way, way down, and now we're doing much better. And look, here's the other truth. The truth is that for a campaign that started off as a fringe campaign at 3% in the polls, we have enormous momentum. You have noticed that one of the recent national polls actually had us ahead of Hillary Clinton in state after state. Her margin is narrowing. So I think people are responding to our message of a rigged economy where ordinary Americans work longer hours for lower wages, and almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%, a corrupt campaign finance system in which billionaires are buying elections. I think our message is resonating, and obviously the proof of that is that Hillary Clinton is more or less echoing much of what we are saying. I think that indicates the success that we are having.
For the record, sir, as you know, we never considered you a fringe candidate, but let's move on. Hillary Clinton has been referring to you as a single, you know that, sir. Hillary Clinton's been referring to you as a
I don't know why Jake Tapper felt it was necessary to say that he never referred to Senator Bernie Sanders as a fringe candidate, but you can see Bernie Sanders was ending that answer there, almost again referring to that whole copyright joke where Hillary Clinton is taking over some of his rhetoric about no bank too big to fail, no bank too big to jail, and if there's any effect of Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign, like I said earlier, I've been kind of leaning towards Bernie Sanders, but not too optimistic about his chances, and this loss in Nevada doesn't bode well, but it's not like he has no chance, but it's starting to tilt in Hillary Clinton's direction, just like it's starting to tilt in Donald Trump's direction, which is even more disturbing. I have 2 more clips of Bernie Sanders from CNN State of the Union before I get to the Hillary Clinton interview from CNN State of the Union. In this next one, you'll see that, and I've taken the Bernie Sanders interview before the Hillary Clinton interview, even though that's not the order they were on the program. But this is something that Hillary Clinton actually said in her victory speech in Nevada last night. She talked about how Bernie Sanders is a one-issue candidate, and so Jake Tapper asked Bernie Sanders about that, and he disagrees with it, but you'll hear in his answer, he mentions climate change, which doesn't fit, but almost everything else he says is like the system's rigged for the rich. I mean, there's free college for the middle class, I guess, isn't quite that. But almost everything else is the one issue that he's claiming he's not the one issue candidate. Maybe it's just a little mistake in the answer, but here's that clip.
Single issue candidate. What do you think when she says that?
I haven't the vaguest idea what she's talking about. If she thinks that income and wealth inequality and the fact that the rich get richer while everybody else gets poorer is the only issue, it's not. We're the only major country on earth that doesn't have a national health care program guaranteeing health care to all people. Talk about that. We need to have free tuition at public colleges and universities so that our kids today can do well in a global economy. We need to have the wealthiest people and largest corporations pay their fair share of taxes. We're working very hard to transform our energy system so we effectively combat climate change. We are talking about dozens of issues. I'm not quite sure where Secretary Clinton is coming from. But what I will repeat is I think we have got to address this real crisis of a corrupt campaign finance system in which billionaires and their super PACs are trying to buy elections. Now, one of the things that we're up against right now, Jake, is that Hillary Clinton's super PAC, funded by Wall Street and other powerful special interests, are going to pour a lot of money into this election against us. We rely on individual contributions, $27 apiece. So you're seeing the impact of billionaire and Wall Street super PACs on an election. That has got to change. We have to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision.
In your concession speech last
So that's Bernie Sanders' answer to the one issue candidacy thing, and I think the Citizens United is system rigged for the rich, and a lot of those other things were the one issue system rigged for the rich. Climate change wasn't in that category, and although I guess it might be the system's rigged for the rich corporations who are the polluters, but I think he could have done better on answering that one issue candidate charge from Hillary Clinton. And I have one more clip of Senator Bernie Sanders before I have three clips of Hillary Clinton, also from CNN State of the Union. And I'm going to kind of accuse Jake Tapper of doing a softball interview of Hillary Clinton, so I didn't want to end the Bernie Sanders clips from Jake Tapper without showing one clip that's kind of a softball question he asked to Bernie Sanders at the end of the interview. And it kind of helps him with the African-American voters that he needs to do better with in South Carolina. And it's this news story about a picture of him getting arrested in Chicago in the 1960s, was found by the Chicago Tribune, I think it was, this week. And Jake Tapper asked him about that at the end of the interview over here.
Chicago Tribune uncovered a photograph this week of you being arrested during the civil rights era. What do you remember from that day?
I remember it pretty well. I remember being arrested. This had to do with opposition to segregated schools in Chicago. I mean, I remember very clearly being arrested, being thrown into a police wagon, driven to the police station. It was an interesting day.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, good luck in South Carolina. We will see you on the campaign trail, sir.
Thank you very much, Dick.
Have you not heard?
Now, I think Bernie Sanders kind of missed an opportunity there to make that answer a lot longer and more detailed. I mean, he said it was an interesting day. He said he'd never forget it. He talked about a couple memories, but if he really wants to increase his the votes he's getting in the African-American community in some of these upcoming states, he's been talking a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement issues, and if you're interested in that, that's another book here to check out, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. I think last week I said that's kind of the Bible of the Black Lives Matter movement. So Bernie Sanders has kind of adopted a lot of that, but he didn't really take that opportunity there to really talk about his commitment to fighting segregation and how it goes back to the 60s, and he could have said a lot more there, and I don't know, I guess you can't fault him for every mistake, but I think that was still a mistake. And now I'm going to move on to three clips of Hillary Clinton. Also, Hillary Clinton only appeared on CNN State of the Union. You saw Bernie Sanders on several different shows there. Like I said, I think Jake Tapper's interview was fairly soft. He never asked her about some of these dirty tricks in Nevada that I've heard some of my friends on the left who support Bernie Sanders complaining about, or even about the Harry Reid and the union workers doing all this legwork right at the last minute. And this beginning, the first two questions he asked her, it's like a double softball. I watched this after I watched Fox News Sunday, and I was going to complain about this Marco Rubio question they asked, or a question they asked to Marco Rubio over on Fox News Sunday about how, aren't you like the new face of diversity in the Republican Party as like the biggest softball of the week? But this is actually a double softball. Jake Tapper starts off saying that, summarizing that Hillary Clinton had her big win last night, and then I'm trying to remember I think it's here in my notes, the first softball is, congratulations, that's the first question. And then the second question is basically, you did all this work, can you tell us more about how you won? And I think Hillary Clinton does a good job with the softball over in this clip.
Race where former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton got a big win at a time that she really needed one. Victories are important, but sometimes stopping a rival's momentum is even more crucial.
The truth is, we aren't a single-issue country. We need more than a plan for the big banks. The middle class needs a raise, and we need more jobs.
Clinton's 52% to 47% victory over Sanders was aided by overwhelming support from African Americans, a constituency she hopes to carry her to victory in the next primary next weekend in South Carolina. And former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joins me now. Madam Secretary, congratulations on your victory in Nevada.
Thank you so much, Jake. It was hard fought, and I just can't say enough about the team on the ground who've been there for months, and the thousands and thousands of volunteers who really got to work. We saw so much great activity the last week, and it turned out to be more than enough, and I'm really happy about that.
And you really went into overdrive just the last 48 hours, really working till early in the morning and rallying your supporters. How exactly do you think you did what you needed to do to get over the finish line with this victory?
I think it was a lot of things. First of all, we've been on the ground there for months, so we were building an organization, developing the relationships, really getting to know people in every community across the state, so that as we built that, we were able to understand more about what was on people's minds, how best to connect with them, to make my case to them. And we had, as I say, thousands of people who were engaged from Las Vegas to the smallest rural town. And I just felt like the people who were working on behalf of our campaign were really committed and dedicated. They did not get in any way knocked off course. They never doubted we could do this, and they turned out to be right, and I am so grateful to each and every one of them.
In your victory speech, you said that.
So I think you have to agree that that was a double softball question from Jake Tapper to Hillary Clinton. The other two clips I'm going to show aren't quite as bad, but before I get to that, I have almost 200 people watching as a live audience here. I saw someone ask a question here along the way. I think the guy's name is Nick something. Here it is. Yeah, Nick Anzo. I get a lot of comments about my shirts, and this also gives me I guess the frame's a little low, but I also wanted to show one of my patrons sent me this cool Star Trek pin I've added to my shirt today. I thought it was a little higher up, but I guess it's a little low, the frame. Maybe I raised the frame up. I got a lot of comments about my hand emotions last week, so I raised the frame up a little. Or actually, last week I lowered it down more than I usually do. So people said that was distracting, but now you can't see my Star Trek pin. But the shirt itself, I've got a bunch of silk shirts that were on sale from Nordstrom Rack. If you, I like these short sleeve button silk shirts of various different varieties for my show, and that's what I've been rotating through, and I think I bought like eight or 9 or 10 of them, or I can't remember, but maybe a little less than that. So that answers that question. Now, getting back to the Hillary Clinton interview, the next couple questions from Jake Tapper had to do first with Hillary Clinton losing Latinos in Nevada, according to these entrance polls. And you'll see Hillary Clinton disputes those. That was alluded to in a question Jake Tapper asked Bernie Sanders earlier. Like I said, I'm showing the interviews out of order because Hillary Clinton's interview came before Bernie Sanders' interview on State of the Union. And Hillary Clinton disputes that. And then in the follow-up question, Jake Tapper asks about appealing to independents, and Hillary Clinton gives, as usual, an extensive, well-thought-out answer in this clip.
Well, you won, but looking ahead, you still have 47 other states to go, plus the District of Columbia and some territories. So I do want to look at some areas, let's call them areas for possible improvement. One of them is that Bernie Sanders did better with Latino voters and you not as well with Latino voters, at least according to our entrance poll, as many people anticipated. This is a constituency you've worked very hard to cultivate. What do you think happened, and how can you fix it? How can you improve your standing with Latino voters?
You know, that's just not what our analysis shows, number one. Yeah, we don't believe that the so-called entry polls were particularly accurate. If you look at the precincts, you look at where we dominated, there's a lot of evidence we did very, very well with every group of voter. We did well and better than we thought in rural areas, which I was very happy to hear. We held our own up in Reno. So it was a broad-based turnout, and we dominated, of course, in Clark County where Las Vegas is. So, you know, we look at all of this. We obviously are guided by the information we have. We think that it shows that we always have to work hard for every single voter, and we intend to do that in every place. I'm in Texas right now. I'm in Houston, about to address a large crowd that is gathered here late at night. We're reaching out to everybody, and we want to do as well as we can with everyone.
An area of improvement, I think you'll grant me, even if you don't believe the entrance polls on Latino voters, is potentially independent voters. And I know that you have blamed the whole trust issue with independent voters on decades of unfair attacks by Republicans, smears against you by Republicans. But how do you fix it going forward? If you do become the nominee, you're going to need independent voters.
Absolutely, and I'm going to do what I've always done. I'm going to keep, reaching out to voters. I understand that voters have questions. I'm going to do my very best to answer those questions. I think there's an underlying question that maybe is really in the back of people's minds, and that is, is she in it for us or is she in it for herself? I think that's, a question that people are trying to sort through. And I'm going to demonstrate that I've always been the same person, fighting for the same values, fighting to make a real difference in people's lives, long before I was ever in elected office, even before my husband was in the presidency. So I know that I have to, make my case. I have to demonstrate what I've achieved. I have to really make clear that, look, we want to make progress in our country. We want to make a real difference in people's lives. That's what I've always been about. That's what I would do as president. So I'm very hopeful and will continue to work hard to make that case and to win over as many voters as possible to get the nomination. And then we'll see who the Republicans nominate, and we'll go from there.
Well, let's talk about that.
So, did you hear that? Hillary Clinton's going to demonstrate to us that she's in this campaign for us, not for herself. So, I look forward to that. And there's one more question I want to show Hillary Clinton answering from Jake Tapper on CNN. And this is an issue I've covered over the years. At least in one video I know I showed, I think it was called Fox News Bias for Israel in Gaza Conflict. It's one of my very popular videos that YouTube decided not to monetize for some reason that really annoyed me over the years because it's gotten hundreds of thousands of views. And in that video I talked about how not just Fox News but the media in general and politicians tend to have a pretty monolithic view on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that not being pro-Israel is very rare in American politics and American media. And you'll see Hillary Clinton answering a question about a conflict between, I think it was Trump and Cruz. Donald Trump said that he would be neutral on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and then he got attacked by Ted Cruz as not being pro-Israel enough. And Hillary Clinton, she actually gives a fairly good answer. She doesn't really say you have to be as pro-Israel as Ted Cruz wants us to be, though you can tell Hillary Clinton is definitely going to follow the policies that are going to make the Israel lobby happy, I think. But in this answer, she shows how being neutral in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is actually beneficial to Israel. And that's the last Hillary Clinton clip of the broadcast over here.
Former Secretary of State, I really am interested in your views on the foreign policy issue that has emerged on the Republican side that I'm sure you have opinions about. Donald Trump was asked this week about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and he said, quote, "Let me be sort of a neutral guy. I don't want to say whose fault it is. I don't think it helps." Now, Senator Ted Cruz, on the other hand, said, quote, "I have no intention of being neutral." He would be standing by Israel. You're a former Secretary of State. What do you think about those answers? Where would you be?
Well, I think both of them missed the mark. First of all, Israel is our partner, our ally. We have long-standing and important ties with Israelis going back to the formation of the State of Israel. I will defend and do everything I can to support Israel, particularly as the neighborhood around it seems to become more dangerous and difficult. I also believe the Palestinians deserve to have a state of their own. That's why I support a two-state solution. That's what I've worked on. That's what I tried to move forward when I was secretary, and holding three very intense conversations between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the Palestinian Authority. Those are not mutually exclusive. I happen to think that moving toward a two-state solution, trying to provide more support for the aspirations of the Palestinian people, is in the long-term best interests of Israel, as well as the region and, of course, the people themselves. So I don't think either of the answers you just relayed to me really grapple with the challenges that we have to continue to work to overcome.
Madam Secretary, thanks so much for joining us.
So that's Hillary Clinton's answer about the Trump-Cruz conflict on whether the U.S. president should be neutral in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I will actually show a clip of Donald Trump a little later talking about that issue to Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press. And like I said, that's the last clip of Hillary Clinton. That's the last clip on the Democratic side, although this next clip is kind of transitional. So it's ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. It starts off with George Stephanopoulos summarizing the results of both the Republican primary in South Carolina and the Democratic caucus in Nevada, and saying, Hillary, it was the night of the front runners, strong for Hillary, dominant for Donald Trump. Can Donald Trump be stopped? To Jonathan Karl giving a report on the results. It's mostly about the Republicans. There's like a slight reference to the Democrats during this report, but that's why I used it as the transitional clip here, because it's mostly about the Republicans, and we'll get us to that topic. And after I show this clip, I'll have a couple more general reports about the results in South Carolina with the Republicans. But this is the one from ABC this morning over here.
Now in command. For the Democrats, Hillary Clinton found her firewall in Nevada. That win out west, nearly 6 points over Bernie Sanders, puts her back in control. She heads into South Carolina and Super Tuesday with big leads in the biggest states. And for the Republicans, it's all about Donald Trump. His double-digit win over Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz in South Carolina, a possible delegate sweep, kills off the campaign of Jeb Bush, puts him in a powerful position. No Republican who's won both New Hampshire and South Carolina has ever lost the nomination. The big question for so many in the GOP today, a question unimaginable 1 year ago, can Donald Trump be stopped? He joins us live in a moment. First, Karl brings us all the results of the biggest day yet in this campaign. Good morning, John.
Good morning, George. This is a remarkable moment in American politics, which once seemed utterly impossible, has now moved one step closer to reality. Hillary Clinton could be facing off against Donald Trump this fall for the presidency of the United States. With his big win in South Carolina, Donald Trump took command.
There's nothing easy about running for president, I can tell you. It's tough, it's nasty, it's mean, it's vicious, it's beautiful. When you win, it's beautiful.
Trump's back-to-back victories in South Carolina and New Hampshire bode well for his chances on Super Tuesday, 11 states voting on March 1st.
Let's put this thing away and let's make America great again.
While Trump celebrated, Senator Marco Rubio narrowly edged out Ted Cruz for second place. Both seem to declare victory, ready to take on Trump.
After tonight, this has become a three-person race, and we will win the nomination.
We are the only campaign that has beaten and can beat Donald Trump.
After betting big on a South Carolina comeback, Jeb Bush's distant fourth-place finish ended his White House bid.
The people of Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina have spoken, and I really respect their decision. So tonight, I am suspending my campaign.
The field won't narrow much. John Kasich and Ben Carson are both staying in. Meanwhile, in Nevada, Hillary Clinton was finally able to slow the momentum of Bernie Sanders.
Some may have doubted us, but we never doubted each other.
While conceding a defeat, Sanders touted how quickly his campaign has closed the gap.
We have come a very long way in 9 months. It is clear to me, and I think most observers, that the wind is at our backs. We have the momentum.
Back in South Carolina, Donald Trump showed remarkable strength across the board, even winning evangelicals over Ted Cruz. And so far, Trump has won 44 of the state's 50 delegates. The remaining 6 could still go his way. And the map and the math get even better for him as the race goes national. By March 15th, half of the delegates will have been awarded. Among the states voting on March 1st is Ted Cruz's home state of Texas. If Cruz is to have a prayer of winning the nomination, he's got to win there. 2 weeks later, it's Marco Rubio's home state of Florida. If Rubio is to have any chance at all, George, he absolutely must win that winner-take-all Florida primary.
No question about that. Karl, thanks for joining us.
So, yeah, that's the report from ABC, and I don't know, I thought it was a fairly straightforward report, not a lot of spin. The next report, it's the overview before I get to the clips of the Republican candidates. This one comes from Chuck Todd, and one thing I noticed about this is some of the results had Rubio at 23% and Cruz at 22%. Others had them both at 22%. This is one of the ones that had Rubio at 23%. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of spin to talk about. This is the Chuck Todd report on NBC's Meet the Press, fairly brief, talking about the results in South Carolina yesterday here.
Trump made it clear that he is now the Republican frontrunner. Trump scored a big win in South Carolina, winning 33% of the vote and all 50 delegates at stake. The battle for second, a distant second, frankly, was a back-and-forth affair all night, with Marco Rubio edging out Ted Cruz by just 1 percentage point, 23-22. Bush, Kasich, Carson, they all finished way behind, and before the night was over, of course, Jeb Bush was officially out of the race. Here are Trump, Rubio, and Cruz as the night unfolded.
There's nothing easy about running for president, I can tell you. It's tough, it's nasty, it's mean, it's vicious, it's beautiful. When you win, it's beautiful. And we are going to start winning for our country.
Now the children of the Reagan Revolution are ready to assume the mantle of leadership.
Tonight, despite millions and millions of dollars of false and nasty attacks, despite the entirety of the political establishment coming together against us. South Carolina has given us another remarkable result.
By the way, no Republican has ever won South Carolina and Iowa or New Hampshire, as Trump has, without going on to win the nomination. On the Democratic side, Hillary...
So that's the NBC report. You notice they both mentioned that thing about no Republican ever having won South Carolina after winning either Iowa and New Hampshire and not getting the nomination. So Trump would be the first if he's not the nominee, and he's looking more and more like the nominee. And I'm going to show one more of these overview reports. I showed the ABC, I showed the NBC. The next one is the Fox News report. This actually is Karl Cameron. Remember, I said the Ed Henry report was going to be Karl Cameron, but in this one, there is one little weird piece of bias here, and later I'm going to show how Fox News seems to really be pushing Marco Rubio as the establishment candidate and hoping he's going to be the face of the Republican Party and not Donald Trump, I guess. But I think if you pay attention somewhere during this report, Karl Cameron will say that Marco Rubio eked out a win over Ted Cruz since he ended up beating Ted Cruz, but he was still in second place. Not that they don't mention that, but they use the word win next to Rubio, which seems like a little bit of a spin over in the Fox News report here.
Thanks, Chris. Donald Trump has now won the first two primaries, New Hampshire and last night South Carolina, back-to-back. And he is looking to make good on his prediction to, quote, run the table.
Let's have a big win in Nevada. Let's have a big win at the SEC. Let's put this thing away.
I want to begin by congratulating Donald Trump. But after tonight, this has become a three-person race, and we will win the nomination.
Marco Rubio grabbed second, coming back from fifth in New Hampshire, and narrowly eked out a win, just a fraction of a percentage point, against Ted Cruz, who came in third.
If you are a conservative, this is where you belong. We are the only campaign that has beaten and can beat Donald Trump.
Jeb Bush, despite spending more money than any other candidate, took fourth and bowed out.
I've had an incredible life, and for me, public service has been the highlight of that life. But no matter what the future holds, here's the greatest safety landing, if you can imagine. Tonight, I'm going to sleep with the best friend I have and the love of my life.
Now, folks, it's down to the final four. And we are going to travel all across this country. And I'm going to take you with me.
John Kasich came in fifth, far behind, but because Jeb Bush dropped out, he's now fourth. Ben Carson came in last, but both Kasich and Carson have vowed to keep on going. And the next 3 weeks is going to be a frenzy of voting across the country. More than half of the delegates will be selected by, including March 15th. And on March 15th, there are winner-take-all states for the first time. And Donald Trump will be facing it in two big states, Ohio, where John Kasich is the governor, and Florida, where Marco Rubio is the senator. Chris?
Karl Cameron.
So that's the third and final one of the overview reports of what happened on the Republican side I want to show you. And now I'm going to get to the actual candidate clips. I'm going to show you first one John Kasich clip, followed by a couple Ted Cruz clips, I think like 6 Marco Rubio clips and 9 Donald Trump clips. First, the John Kasich clip, Governor John Kasich, you just heard. He came in 5th, but now that Jeb Bush dropped out, it puts him into 4th, so we can say he's in the final 4, though he doesn't seem to have much of a chance, and in some ways he's stopping the other non-Trump candidates from beating Donald Trump, which is a question they asked Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, and so I'm going to show how Ohio Governor John Kasich answered that question. And it's the one clip of him I'm going to show. This is from, which one is it from? Oh, yeah, it's from CBS's Face the Nation. Well, I'll talk about his answer a little bit after you watch that clip.
People who would consider themselves mainstream Republicans are making is that only until there becomes one mainstream alternative to Donald Trump is there any chance for Trump to get knocked off by people whose beliefs they share. So why aren't you just continuing to split the vote with Marco Rubio? Address those concerns.
Well, maybe, but again, I finished second in New Hampshire. He finished fifth. I didn't play in South Carolina, and we're going to go to, on March the 1st, to a number of states where we think we're going to do well. So it's a matter of continuing on, John, and being able to take advantage of the grassroots. We now have some Bush people who have come our way, both from a political point of view and a fundraising point of view, and we're going to keep struggling to make sure that we can be out there, keep putting the resources together to be in a position of doing well. And look, remember this. I'm the person who beats Hillary Clinton by more than any other Republican candidate for president. In the USA Today poll, I beat her by 11 points. And again, I've risen to third place in the national polls out of nowhere without spending really much money. I get the money, continue to put the grassroots together, and you're going to see a great result. So people want to consolidate. They ought to consolidate my way.
Let me ask you a policy question.
Oh, sorry about that delay. Sorry there. I'm trying to read your comments and prepare a couple things coming up. I actually just took a screenshot of someone's comment that I'll get to in a minute, but that's the one Kasich clip answering the question about how the multiple candidates are stopping Donald or allowing Donald Trump to win because, and this is something I've said for many months, and I think I even said it when I was interviewed over on the Drunken Peasants. I saw someone from the Drunken Peasants was hanging out before the show started, or someone who was told to come here by the Drunken Peasants somehow. I'm not sure what that meant, but I appeared on the Drunken Peasants podcast a while back, and they asked me about Trump, and I said that I thought he had a ceiling of, 25-30%, and the fact that he still has multiple candidates against him allows him to be the winner with 3-4 other people. He can win with 30%. I think he got 32. So he's doing better than I thought. I thought his ceiling would be lower than it is. I guess the more you win, the higher your ceiling gets. And someone said that on one of the shows, although I don't think that's a clip I took. But you'll see that not only John Kasich was asked the question about how they're splitting the vote. Here's a Ted Cruz clip. One of the two Ted Cruz clips I have. This is Ted Cruz over on, I think this is ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, right? Where he says, he asks him basically the same question, but this is about Rubio and Cruz. Are the two of them basically guaranteeing victory to Donald Trump? And, well, I'll talk about that a little more after you watch Ted Cruz's answer to the question here.
True, but as long as you and Marco Rubio are going after each other, doesn't that give Donald Trump a clear path?
Look, no doubt, and I thought the question you asked Marco a minute ago about why he's afraid to take on Donald Trump is a great question. If you look at Donald devotes all of his time and energy, all of his money to attacking me. That demonstrates that Donald sees me as the only real threat to him, and for that matter, Marco devotes all of his time and energy to attacking me as well. He's been unwilling or afraid or for whatever reason, he won't take on Donald Trump. If you want to beat Donald Trump, you've got to go with the only campaign that has demonstrated we can beat Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, going into Super Tuesday, I think we are positioned 9 days from today to have an amazing day in Super Tuesday. Our base on the ground is strong. And listen, Republicans want a real conservative. They don't want someone like Donald Trump who supported Jimmy Carter and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, who supported expanding Obamacare into socialized medicine, who supported the Wall Street bailouts and cronyism and the Obama stimulus. They want instead someone who will stand up to the Washington deals.
We will be watching. Senator Cruz, thanks.
So that's Senator Cruz's answer to the same question I showed on from Governor John Kasich. And I have one more clip of Senator Ted Cruz. And this ended up being almost his entire interview that they showed on NBC's Meet the Press. There are a couple follow-up questions to the first question, which is, well, actually Chuck Todd has a mix-up here where he shows the wrong clip, but it's basically... He shows two different clips. First, the wrong clip was going to be his second clip of all the other candidates calling Ted Cruz a liar, basically. And then Ted Cruz's response Although his response is very similar to the, after Chuck Todd shows the first clip, Ted Cruz gives this response that's very similar to the second clip he shows that was supposed to be the first clip. And then there's a follow-up from Chuck Todd, so that's why this whole thing is like 5.5 minutes long. Some people ask me about, fair use. How long clip are you allowed to use? Well, that's something you have to decide for yourself as to like how much you need to use. And sometimes I think I need to use the question, the answer, and 2 follow-up questions and answers if you want to understand the entire. This is not like the whole interview, or it came close to being the whole interview, or the whole interview they broadcast on Meet the Press. I didn't actually show the whole interview, but it's the whole answer to Chuck Todd's question, including the 2 follow-ups, and I will discuss that a little more after you watch it. It's a little under 6 minutes of Ted Cruz really filibustering. You'll hear at the end, Chuck Todd is like saying, "Oh, all right, okay," and that's kind of what I'm thinking, and this is the last Ted Cruz clip, so it's almost 6 minutes long, but just keep thinking while you're watching it, no more Ted Cruz after this clip, in this clip.
I'm joined now by the very narrow 3rd place finisher in South Carolina, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Chuck, good morning.
Let me start with a clip from your press conference that you held on Wednesday, because I have a question on the other side, but I want to show it because it seemed unlike other events that you had held throughout the campaign. Here it is.
A culture exists within the Cruz camp that would allow people to take advantage of a situation like this in a very dishonest way.
Well, I've said he's been lying, because if you say something that isn't true and you say it over and over again and you know that it's not true, there's no other word for it.
You talk about people that lies. This Ted Cruz, this is the biggest liar I've ever seen.
This was going to be my second question, but I'm going to go there. You heard it there. 3 different candidates have accused you of being a liar. One out of 3 South Carolina voters thought you were running the most untruthful campaign. Has all of this hurt you? Has it stuck?
Oh, listen, Chuck, we saw with both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio that their response, whenever you point to anything in their record, is just to yell liar, 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 and to get very personal and to make direct character attacks. And my approach from the very beginning of this campaign, starting a year ago, is that I will not respond in kind. I do not intend to insult any of the candidates. I will sing their praises. I'll sing Donald's praises and Marco's praises and everybody else's praises. But I'm going to keep the focus on substance and records, and there's a reason why they scream liar, because when you point to their own records, their own voting records, their own words, they don't like their records because their records are inconsistent with what they're running on. You know, Donald Trump threatened to file a defamation suit against me for running a TV ad that consisted almost entirely of his own words on national television. Now, that's really a remarkable theory, that it is defamation to show people what he said on national TV. I think the voters are smarter than that.
But, Senator, I'm going to play that press conference clip for you now, because it to me, contrasts with what you just said. Here it is.
Donald has had a long career of using great wealth and power trying to bully others. Whenever anyone points to their actual record, the response of both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio is to yell the word liar. Whenever anyone does, as this ad does, plays the actual words of Donald Trump on national television, his response is to yell liar. Their strategy is simply to yell liar, liar, liar.
You did an entire press conference. It was some 30 minutes on Wednesday. You weren't talking about the issues that you normally do talk about on the trail. You weren't the happy warrior that you just described yourself as being. It seemed as if you allowed yourself to essentially let Trump and Rubio so get under your skin that you focused on them and you've lost focus on your own message.
Oh, listen, Chuck, I was then and am now very much a happy warrior, very much joyful. That press conference was simply just discussing the facts, was laying out the actual facts, not engaging in character attacks myself, just putting out here are the facts, here are the evidence. I noted, for example, that both of them were relying on fabrications. For example, Donald Trump tweeted out to the world a quote allegedly from Senator Tom Coburn impugning my honesty. Within hours, Tom Coburn came out publicly and said that quote was an utter fabrication. And I said, it's really remarkable to see 2 candidates, Trump and Rubio, making things up and putting things out for which there is no evidence and no basis. But listen, Chuck, the important thing is we had an incredible evening last night. Last night, what we saw happen in South Carolina, particularly when you put Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina together, two things have happened. Number one, there is now only one strong conservative in this race who can win, and we see conservatives continuing to unite behind our campaign. But number two, for anyone who doesn't believe that Donald Trump is the best candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton in November, and that's about 70% of Republicans nationwide who don't think Donald Trump is the right guy, our campaign is the only campaign that has beaten Donald Trump and that can beat Donald Trump. So what we're seeing is we're seeing Republicans coming to us in incredible numbers, going to tedcruz.org, signing up, volunteering, contributing.
You finished third in a state with the highest evangelical turnout that we've seen yet, and you finished third. That sort of doesn't support what you just said, that conservatives are coming together and rallying to your cause.
So, Chuck, our path to victory from the beginning was always do well in the first 4 states and then have a strong, strong night on Super Tuesday coming up on March 1st. In Iowa, everyone in the press said we couldn't win. We won an overwhelming victory in Iowa. In New Hampshire, everyone in the press said a conservative couldn't do well in a moderate New England state. We won a strong third there. And then in South Carolina, we were effectively tied for second. A week ago, Donald was 20 points ahead. We closed that gap. And what we saw there were a number of very encouraging things. For one thing, we won young people in South Carolina. Our campaign was in first place with young people. By the way, we won young people in Iowa as well, and we were in second place with young people in New Hampshire. One of the things we're seeing is young people who are optimistic, who want a future, who want our constitutional rights, are coming to our campaign. And if you want to beat Donald Trump, you know, one of the clearest indications of who can beat Trump is Donald spends every waking moment attacking me. He doesn't attack any other candidates because his campaign views us as the only real threat to him. And that's why we're seeing so many people come around and say, listen, we want a real conservative. We don't want a Washington deal maker who will support Democrats and cut deals to grow government and give in to the cronyism of corporate welfare.
Very quickly, are you going to beat Donald Trump in Texas?
So, like I said, that was kind of a long answer, but and I don't know if you noticed, if you listen carefully during like the last minute of that answer, you can hear Chuck Todd going, all right, because he's like getting this one answer as almost his entire interview. Although there was kind of good follow-up there about not winning evangelicals, but I don't think Chuck Todd did a really good job of stopping Senator Ted Cruz, the master debater, from filibustering, or I guess the master Senate debater, I should say, from filibustering that his answer there and going to his talking points, even though he did do a couple good follow-ups to try to be a little confrontational, but all those all right. I guess they weren't in the same room, so it was a little difficult to cut him off. So the next clip I want to show, it's part of this interview of Senator Marco Rubio over on Fox News Sunday that later I'm going to criticize as being too much of a softball interview because it plays into this dream they have of Marco Rubio being the nominee and representing the new face of diversity in the Republican Party. But even though Chris Wallace's interview or later question of Senator Marco Rubio is really softball, this question, it's a little bit diabolical because it shows a real Robo-Rubio malfunction, or whatever you want to call it. I saw various different hashtags, but it shows how Marco Rubio goes all robotic and has problems not going to his talking points. That's what he got in trouble with Chris Christie for in the debate right before the New Hampshire primary, where Chris Christie pointed out he was going back to the same 30-second talking point over and over again, and Marco Rubio couldn't even stop doing it after Chris Christie pointed it out. And last week I showed how Chuck Todd asked a question of Marco Rubio that assumed Bill Clinton had expressed regret for not getting Osama bin Laden, and Marco Rubio still brought that talking point up in his answer, which I thought was kind of a more subtle Robo-Rubio malfunction. But here I think it's much more blatant, where Chris Wallace asked Chris Wallace asked Senator Marco Rubio the same question I've shown in several other interviews of the other candidates, the last two, where John Kasich and Ted Cruz both got asked, should some of you drop out so that there's one candidate opposing Donald Trump? And you'll see in Chris Wallace's question, he does this little diabolical trick where he says, and don't tell me that's up to them. They have to decide when to get out because I want to know what you think's good for the party. And of course, one of Marco Rubio's talking points is, well, that's up to them. And he says, well, I have to say that in his first answer. And then Chris Wallace does a follow-up, and you'll see he starts to go back to that same talking point, and there's like a moment there where you can see like the little wheel turning, like the buffering or whatever, where he like starts off the talking point and backs out of it and says a different answer. I'll talk about that a little more, and you can let me know what you think after you watch that clip over here.
Dropped out last night. Are you calling on John Kasich and Ben Carson to also drop out so that the party, the rest of the party, that 70%, can begin to unite around you? And please don't give me the it's up to them answer. I mean, would it be good for the party for the others to drop out and make this a three-man race?
Well, first, I do have to give you that answer because I'm no one to tell anyone to drop out. I mean, John Kasich is out there working as hard as I am, and he's been doing this almost as long as we have, and he has every right to make that decision for himself.
But would it be best for the
Kasich
party?
campaign is largely based in one place. Well, I think that's for him. I'm not going to. I believe that the sooner we can coalesce, the better we're going to be as a party in general. I mean, and so certainly, but I'm not here to tell him to do whatever he needs to do. It's going to happen one way or another. There's a natural process that's going to take hold. I think the question is the timing. It's clear that John Kasich is going to focus, I think, entirely on Michigan. And at least that's what he's announced. And yeah, it's his right to do that. But we're going to continue to work everywhere. Today we'll be in 3 states. We finish up tonight in Nevada after stopping in Arkansas, first starting here in Tennessee. We're going to compete everywhere. And we feel good about that coalescing happening in all those places where these other candidates are not.
All right. You say that.
So did you see it? Did you see the little wheel turning, the little buffer there where right after Chris Wallace asked that follow-up about is it good for the party, he like started saying, well, I'll leave it up to that. I don't know, was it a Rubio malfunction? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. That's the little diabolical part of a question that Chris Wallace asked Senator Marco Rubio that I wanted to show before. I showed the 2 increasing softball questions that compete with that double softball that Jake Tapper asked to Hillary Clinton. Well, the first softball question that Chris Wallace asked to Senator Marco Rubio has to do with Senator Ted Cruz's dishonesty. He asked him a question about a charge he's made about some photoshopping that Ted Cruz did of Marco Rubio and Barack Obama. And while he's asking the question, he basically shows the evidence that pretty much shows it's been photoshopped. And I will talk about that a little more after you watch that clip over here.
Let me talk to you about that second side of it, because things seem to have gotten personal between you and Ted Cruz, with you accusing him of lying and his campaign of playing dirty tricks. And here's what you said, and I want to put these pictures up side by side. This was the real picture on the left, and on the right was the Photoshop version that appeared to show you shaking hands with President Obama and the idea that you two were together on the trade pact. Here's what you said after that.
The picture's fake. It's a Photoshop of someone else shaking hands, and it appears it isn't even Barack Obama either. So I think this is now a disturbing pattern, guys. It's a disturbing pattern. Every day they're making things up. In this case, they literally made up a picture.
Straight out, do you believe that Ted Cruz has the integrity, the character to be president, or do you think there's something missing there?
Well, I think certainly in his campaign it's missing. I've never seen this behavior from him before up until he started running for president, and in the last couple of weeks. Look, I mean, the other night a gentleman fainted at one of my events. We stopped the event. I stopped and said a prayer for him, and within hours his campaign was sending out robocalls in South Carolina telling people that I had cut off my event short and had announced that if I didn't win in South Carolina I would be dropping out. I mean, it's just, these are little things, but they add up and they're important. It's very, you know, this sort of pattern is very, very disturbing. And we're all used to rough and tumble here and people playing on the edges, but to just literally make things up. In a week, he's been rebuked by National Right to Life on my position on Planned Parenthood. He's misstated my position on marriage. You know, did robocalls in Spanish to English-speaking households in South Carolina, trying to, I guess, you know, offend people against me. So it's just very bizarre. It's an ongoing pattern. It happens every single day now. He did robocalls on the Confederate flag against Donald Trump in South Carolina, a very difficult and painful issue in South Carolina that he wanted to reignite. So bottom line is, you conduct a campaign like that, it's going to reflect on you, it's going to reflect on your campaign, and I think ultimately, if it continues, it does say something about your ability to govern this country.
Of course, while you are...
So I thought that was a pretty easy question from Chris Wallace, host of Fox News Sunday, for Senator Marco Rubio, that let him just take off on Senator Ted Cruz and how dishonest he's been in this campaign. And if you think that was a fairly easy question, I think that was nothing compared to the second softball, what I thought was going to be the worst softball of the program, until I saw that Jake Tapper double softball to Hillary Clinton. But this is Chris Wallace basically asking Senator Marco Rubio, with the endorsements he got from the Indian American Republican governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, and the African American senator, Republican senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, along with the Hispanic American possible Republican nominee for president, Marco Rubio. If, you know, the three of them, aren't they the new face of diversity of the Republican Party? That's basically the question that Chris Wallace asked Marco Rubio over here.
You got a big boost this week, and a lot of the late deciders went for you after you got the endorsement of the popular governor of South Carolina, who endorsed you over Jeb Bush especially. A lot of observers think that the two of you would make a good ticket for Republicans, young members of minorities. I was struck last night at your statement. I mean, not only were you there as a member of minority, and Nikki Haley, also Tim Scott, an African-American, the senator. How attractive and appealing is that to you to present a different face of the Republican Party?
Well, first, let me say that obviously Nikki Haley's endorsement was a big deal, but in the process, I also gained a friend, and we've become friends over the last 3 days, and I've grown to really like her and admire her. We have a lot in common, and so I think that really helped us hit it off, and I enjoyed very much campaigning with her, and we look forward to her deploying her on the road to other places as well. And Tim Scott is a dear friend and someone who also has a lot in common in terms of kind of where we come from and how we grew up, although he faced some real difficult circumstances as a young child. So as far as look, that's who we are. I mean, that's what the Republican Party is. I was on a town hall the other night on national television, and I was asked about it, and someone made an allusion to, you know, something about the tone of the campaign with regards to appealing to minorities. And I said, just today, I was endorsed by the daughter of Indian American immigrants, who's the governor of South Carolina, standing alongside an African American Republican U.S. senator, both of whom were there to support a Cuban American U.S. senator. It's pretty amazing that the Republican Party is indeed the party of diversity. It is the only party where you have so many people of so many different backgrounds on a national stage. I'm very proud of that. And we're going to continue to showcase that.
I got 10.
So I guess the answer was yes. Yes, we are the new face of diversity of the Republican Party, and thank you for asking. Well, not quite that, but it was quite a softball, and if you don't think that was like the Fox News dream, that was also actually a little teaser for the discussion that Chris Wallace used in the break between the like they had some commercials, and then he came in with the teaser before more commercials and the continuation of the show in this little 19-second clip here.
Plan to present a new face of the GOP and become the establishment candidate.
Take a picture of this because the new group of conservatives that's taken over America looks like a Benetton commercial.
We'll ask our panel what Rubio's strong finish means for the 2016 race. Next on Fox News Sunday.
So, yeah, that's the Fox News Sunday spin, the dream of the Republican Party, and Senator Marco Rubio still has a chance. He has to win somewhere, but it's not, and he's like saying that he's going to win in Florida. I mean, he has to win in Florida, as I think the ABC report from John Karl said earlier. I have a few more Marco Rubio clips before I get to my 9 Donald Trump clips, although all the there aren't any big long ones. They're all like a minute or something like that. No like big 3-4 minute clips. But first I want to show how Chuck Todd asked some more confrontational questions of Marco Rubio when he was over on Meet the Press. This first one, this is a good question to ask just about all the politicians who don't come in first but give a victory speech. How do you spin your coming in far second into a win? And you can see I heard both Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz make this argument about how 65 or 70% of Republicans are voting against Donald Trump because they clump together the entire anti-Trump vote, which may or may not all go to one candidate, or Trump might get some of those votes too as other candidates drop out. But here's Marco Rubio making that argument to Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. Here.
By the man who came in second last night, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Senator Rubio, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Okay, sorry about that. Let me start with how you feel about this win, this second place finish last night. You had every major endorsement that you could have had, and yet you still finished a distant second in South Carolina. How do you look at this as a positive and not a negative?
Because 65% of the people voted yesterday, and about 70% of Republicans around the country have said we want someone other than Donald Trump to be our nominee. And the problem is that vote was still divided even last night among 5 other people or 4 other people. I think now the race is narrowing even more, and as it narrows and continues to narrow, we're going to continue to gain. So it was a very unusual year. You usually don't have 5 campaigns operating full-time in a state this late into the process, 3 states in. But I feel great that now that the choices have become less and less, more and more that new voter, or alternative to Donald Trump vote, is going to coalesce around us, and obviously we have to go out and do the work of making that happen, but we feel good about that.
But the issue that it seems like...
Was there a little bit of a... Need to do a little Marco Rubio there? More than any of the other candidates, for some reason he seems to have that dry mouth problem. I don't know what it is, but I have 2 more Rubio clips before I get to the 9 Donald Trump clips. I saw someone in the comments saying not to worry about it because he is the front runner, and that is true. He's looking more and more like the Republican nominee, though Marco Rubio still has a chance, along with Cruz, which is why I showed extended clips of both of them. And this is talking to Chuck Todd about that question that I raised before the last clip about where is Marco Rubio going to win. And, he's not going to give away his strategy, so he's not going to tell us where he's going to win, but he does have some sort of vague promises of winning at some point in the future. Let me make sure I'm playing the right clip here. Clip number 26.
Woke up in Tennessee this morning. That tells me that's a little bit of a tell. That's a state, obviously, you think you can win on Super Tuesday. Where else do you win on Super Tuesday? Because now it's about winning. You haven't won yet. You got to win somewhere.
It is. Well, I think, first of all, as we understand, all of these states award delegates differently, so we have a different strategy for each of these states depending on how they award delegates. When we get into the winner-take-all states in the middle of March, Ohio, Florida, big chunks of delegates, that's where you really need to begin to win states, and I feel very good where we're going to be by then. So obviously, I'm not going to reveal to you today our campaign playbook, but I'm going to tell you that we're going to be in a lot of different places today. I'm in Tennessee, I'm in Arkansas, I'll be in Nevada. We're going to contest and work very hard for those caucuses on Tuesday, and then we're going to keep moving forward in a bunch of other places. We have a national campaign, and I feel great about it, especially after last night.
All right, Senator Marco Rubio, I'm going to leave it there. Stay safe on the trail. It's going to be a big, quick race over the next 23 days. Thank you.
So that's the last Marco Rubio clip from the Chuck Todd interview, where he talks about where he may or may not win sometime in the future, having not won any of the contests yet, but he could still win in some places, and he could still end up being the nominee, especially if there's a brokered convention, which they talked about on several of the shows, although not in any of the clips that I picked out to show to you, because I usually don't pick pundit clips because I don't want to be doing meta commentary, commenting on the commentary, but Like I said, I have one more Marco Rubio clip. This is from his interview over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where George asked Marco Rubio about something that Donald Trump said I'm going to show Donald Trump talking about in one of the subsequent Trump clips here. But this is Marco Rubio's response. It's, I guess, Donald Trump retweeted some tweet about how it's not only Ted Cruz but also Marco Rubio who isn't eligible to be president, even though he was born in the territory of the United States. Maybe it has to do with having two non-American parents. I don't even know what the deal is. I did not research it, but Marco Rubio also did not spend much time on it. He pivots to his issues in the final Marco Rubio clip of the broadcast here.
Number 2 finisher in South Carolina, Senator Marco Rubio. Thanks for joining us this morning. And Senator Rubio, we just heard Donald Trump say he's not sure you're eligible to run for president. Your response?
Well, this is a pattern. This is a game he plays. He says something that's edgy and outrageous, and then the media flocks and covers that, and then no one else can get any coverage on anything else. And that worked when there were 15 people running for president. It's not going to work anymore. I'm going to spend zero time on his interpretation of the Constitution with regards to eligibility. And I'm going to spend all my time talking about what this campaign should be about. This country faces a very significant and important choice in 2016, and it needs to be made in a serious way. The consequences are extraordinary if we get this election wrong. And Republicans need to nominate someone who's going to unify the party, who's going to grow the party, and who's going to win this election. And that's why I'm asking people to vote for me and to go on my website, marcorubio.com, and sign up and be a part of our effort.
One report in the Huffington.
So that's the last Marco Rubio clip, and kind of with a little backwards clip structure here, I'm going to move on to the Donald Trump clip, starting with the clip where George Stephanopoulos asked Donald Trump about that retweet of the theory that Marco Rubio is not eligible to be president in addition to Ted Cruz. You know, Ted Cruz was born in Canada, but to an American mother, though I've seen some of my viewers in the comments talk about how maybe he's not eligible because his mother had given up her American citizenship and decided to become Canadian. And anyway, I don't want to go into all that, but Donald Trump talks about this tweet with George Stephanopoulos, and basically he doesn't give it much more thought than Marco Rubio did. And he's someone who, I think he has like millions of Twitter followers, but somehow he doesn't know the phrase retweet does not equal endorsement, which is, I think, the message he's trying to convey in his first. This is the first Donald Trump clip talking to George Stephanopoulos here.
He sent out a retweet yesterday suggesting that Marco Rubio might be ineligible to be president, a tweet that said both Cruz and Rubio are ineligible to be POTUS. Do you really believe that?
I think the lawyers have to determine it. It was a retweet, not so much with Marco. I'm not really that familiar with Marco's circumstance.
But then why
I know that Ted
retweet
has a
it?
problem, but I think that because I'm not sure. I mean, let people make their own determination. I know Ted is being now, I think he's being sued by somebody, having nothing to do with me, by the way. He's being sued by somebody, maybe it's in New York, having to do with eligibility.
You're really not
So
sure
he's
that
gonna have to
Marco
work that
Rubio
out.
is eligible to run for president? You're really not sure?
I don't know. I've never looked at it, George. Honestly, I've never looked at it. Somebody said he's not, and I retweeted it. I have 14 million people between Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and I retweet things, and we start dialogue, and it's very interesting. And maybe that's why I have 14 million people, and others have 200 people.
Do you
I don't
think
know.
as you get on this path to the nomination, you're the clear...
So yeah, there you see George Stephanopoulos. I cut out the next question where he asked him, as you become the front runner, are you gonna not tweet all these random things in the middle of the night anymore? And he says maybe, probably, or be more responsible. But he basically said retweets do not equal endorsement, and he'll use that same excuse without using the words in a couple more clips. I'll show where he's accused of retweeting white supremacist tweets, and he says, well, I didn't know they were white supremacists, I just retweet stuff, that's just what I do. Or But that's not this next clip. In this next clip, it's the second clip from George Stephanopoulos, and here he asks him about. Let me make sure I have the right clip. He was asked this on like 3 different shows. I just happened to choose the one from ABC's This Week. I don't know if you hear my dog whining over there. I'll find out why while you're watching the clip of Donald Trump answering if he's performing a hostile takeover of the Republican Party. Let me get the right clip over. Is this number? Yeah, clip number 29 over here.
Over the GOP? No, not at all. You know, I was a member of the establishment of the GOP. I say proudly. I gave $350,000 to the Republican Governors Association, you know, before the June 15th, before I ran, before June 16th. And I gave tremendous amounts of money to people in the Republican Party. I gave to everybody. And I was very establishment. And then once I ran, they said, well, wait a minute, what's going on? That's not supposed to happen, because he doesn't need our money. And, you know, they like to control the people. They like to control the senators and the congressmen, and so that when they go for military awards and when they go for pharmaceutical awards, they make sure they get it. And I'm going to do what's right for the country. You know, as a self-funder, I'm the only one. And as a self-funder, I'm going to do what's right. So, you know, that in that way, it's certainly different. But ultimately, that's going to be good for the party, because we're going to win the election. You know, 2 polls came out recently where I beat Hillary Clinton and I beat Bernie Sanders. I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to be the problem. I think Hillary will be the one that I'm competing against, unless she has legal problems, which will be determined. Finally, Mr. Trump, you told me.
So yeah, that was I don't know what was up with the dog there. I'm sorry. I was trying to. I think something's upsetting the dog, or maybe someone's at the door. But has nothing to do with that Donald Trump answer. But that was a question he was asked on several different shows, and that was basically the same answer he gave, not in like a Rubio way, but basically the same answer. And so the next question I want to show, this is actually not from this. This is from Fox News Sunday, which also had Donald Trump on, and Chris Wallace asked a question. Several of the interviewers who talked to Donald Trump this morning asked about whether he would possibly run as a third party, and he, you know, basically said the same thing to all the questioners, and I will talk about that a little more after you watch the Fox News version from this morning over here.
Raised the question again this week of whether or not you're going to honor your pledge, the loyalty pledge that you signed to run as a Republican, and even if you lose, not to launch a third-party campaign. Is that a threat that you're going to keep wielding throughout this campaign?
No, because I want to run. It's asked by folks like you. You're bringing it up again as an example. No, the pledge is the pledge, but the other side is not honoring it. Look, I signed a pledge. I'm a Republican. I'm the leading Republican by a lot. And that's where I want to be. I don't want to run as an independent. I'm not going to be doing that. I think it's highly, highly unlikely. But I'm not being treated right. When we go to the debates, the room is stacked with donors and special interests. I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm putting up my money. I'm putting up millions and millions and millions of dollars, like throwing it out the window. So far, it's worked. So far, I'm also spending a lot less money than all these other people that are spending, you know, $100 million. And I'm leading by a lot, and they're losing by a lot. But I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm not controlled by special interests. I'm not controlled by donors. I'm not controlled by lobbyists, right? So I'm doing that. But the rooms are stacked. Every time I go to a debate, I walk in, it's like death. And when other people, I won't mention names, but when other people speak, they say something stupid and they get standing ovations. It's very unfair what the RNC is doing. They're stacking the room. And that's unfair, with donors and special interests and lobbyists, and that's unfair.
Are we going to see you at the Fox debate on March 3rd?
Yes, I expect to be there, sure.
Well, I look forward to seeing you, sir. Mr. Trump, thank you. Thanks for your time today.
Me too.
Safe travels on the campaign trail, sir.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we'll...
So that's actually the end of the Fox News interview, but I think the next one is also from the Fox News interview, just a little bit out of order. I wanted to show a more softball question that Chris Wallace asked of Donald Trump. This has to do with just his lightning impression or lightning round rules, quick impressions of his two main rivals now, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. And this is something I think Donald Trump, pretty much across the board, he has toned down his negativity. I also noticed, I'll show this a little later, where he doesn't want to talk about having two main rivals, or it being a three-man race. He's always including John Kasich and Ben Carson because he wants to spread out the votes as long as possible. But I think he's actually sort of trying to mature into the front runner and let the people below him attack each other, as you'll see in his answer to Chris Wallace. This is the final clip from Fox News Sunday this morning. Over here.
People are talking about this now as a three-man race, so let me ask you about your two chief competitors. Thumbnail sketches, lightning round rules. Ted Cruz.
Well, he's very smart, very sharp. You know, I haven't been too happy with the way he's conducted himself, but I understand he wants to win, and it's a little bit tough. He did a couple of robocalls on me yesterday morning. That was the morning of the election. They were tough calls. I thought they were very unfair calls, but they were, you know, they were done. That's why I'm surprised I won by such a big margin. You know, when I entered this, Chris, I wasn't expected to win South Carolina. I was supposed to, you know, maybe not even think about winning it. That was like a number of months ago. And then all of a sudden I went there, I made one speech, and they fell in love with me, and I fell in love with them. Those people are incredible, by the way. They're incredible. We won't forget them.
All right, let's talk about Marco Rubio and his fitness to be president.
Yeah. Well, he's a talented guy. He's a good guy. I like him. We're going to have to see what happens. You know, I start off liking everybody, and then all of a sudden they become mortal enemies. So we'll see what happens. But he's been very respectful, very nice, and I hope to beat him.
You had quite...
So that's my last Donald Trump clip from the Fox News Sunday interview. And I thought that was a fairly softball question, though not an entire softball interview from Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace. Now I want to move on to a few of the questions that Jake Tapper asked to Donald Trump. And the first one actually is kind of in response to something I saw one of the live viewers talk about while several comments back. I saw this in the live comments. This is, I think the name of the commenter is John Capone. Saying that Trump can't win a national election because the Hispanic vote will bury him. And that's basically the basis of Jake Tapper's question about demographics and how even if he wins the same percentage of the white vote that Romney won, 59% I think it was, he still has to win at least 30% of the non-white vote, and he's not going to do it. And you'll hear he doesn't actually say the blacks love me, or, you know, that's my Donald Trump impression for what it's worth, but it's the African Americans love me, or they, you know, it's not the blacks anymore. And at one point he does say the whites, but he never says the blacks in this answer, but he might as well in his answer to Jake Tapper this morning on the question of is he going to bury the Republican Party by destroying their demographic appeal to anyone who's not an angry white guy. Over here.
As you know, among Republican Party leaders in Washington about can you win a general election? Let's talk about demographics for a second. If the next Republican nominee wins the same share of the white vote that Mitt Romney did in 2012, that was 59%, that nominee would need to win 30% of the non-white vote. Now, with all due respect, sir, a lot of Republican leaders in D.C. struggle to envision you accomplishing this, especially given the fact that there are white supremacist groups and individuals like that who support you, some of whom you've even retweeted.
Well, that I know nothing about. I mean, I don't know about retweeting. I mean, you retweet somebody who turns out to be a white supremacist. I know nothing about these groups that are supporting me. I will tell you this. As a candidate, I will bring over many, many Dems. We're going to bring over a lot of Democrats. We're going to bring over a lot of independents. Nobody else will. In all fairness, the other candidates, they will never bring over independents. They will never bring, we're talking about the Reagan Democrats. We're going to bring over tremendous numbers. We're going to bring over youth. Bernie's not going to make it, in my opinion, and I never thought he would. Hillary won't make it. I mean, frankly, if she gets indicted, that's the only way she's going to be stopped. And I think it's going to be between Hillary and myself. They say that it'll be the largest voter turnout in the history of United States elections. And I want to tell you, that's a great compliment to the country because we have such a low voter turnout compared to a lot of other countries. So I think it'll be the greatest voter turnout in history. I mean, the story is, if it's, Hillary against me, that's going to be a tremendous turnout. I'm going to win. I'm going to win places like Michigan that the Republicans can't even think of. They always talk about the 6 states, right, with Ohio and Pennsylvania and, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through the numbers, but I will win places like Michigan that people don't even talk about. I will have a chance of winning New York. If I win New York, the election's over, okay, from an electoral college standpoint. I have a chance of winning New York. I'll win states that aren't in play. I'll win states that the Republicans don't even think of. And one of them that comes to mind is Michigan, and another one is New York. Upstate New York, I'm like the most popular person that's ever lived virtually upstate New York. They're great friends of mine, and we will do very well in New York. I don't know, maybe win it, maybe not, but we're going to come awfully close to winning it, and I think I have a great chance. The other thing is African-American voters. I think I'm going to get a tremendous amount. And you're seeing the stories where African-American leaders are saying, my people really like Trump. Because I'm going to bring jobs back from China and Mexico and Japan and Vietnam and India and all these places that are taking our jobs. I'm going to bring jobs back. And a recent poll came out where I had 25% African American, and the Republicans usually get about 4 or 5%. And one of the hosts said, if you ever get 25%, this election's over. You might as well not run it. I'm going to do great with the African Americans. African American youth is 58% unemployed. African Americans in their prime are substantially worse off, economically than the whites in their prime, and it's it's a very sad situation. I'm going to do great with African Americans. You watch, and I'm going to do great with Hispanics. I employ thousands of Hispanics. I'm going to do great with Hispanics.
I want to get some clarification.
I don't know. I mean, I can't predict the future, but I would be very, 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 very surprised if Donald Trump, after becoming the nominee, which is getting less and less surprising if it happens, but after becoming the nominee and running in the general election, I would be very, 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 very surprised if he does great with the blacks and great with the Hispanics, like he just said there. And by the way, that was the clip where he also disclaimed any knowledge of the white supremacists that he retweeted. Retweets are not endorsements, maybe, but retweeting a white supremacist when you're a presidential candidate, that maybe he needs a little bit more of a Twitter filter or Twitter handle, or maybe just a little more research. I don't know. Maybe I just don't use Twitter enough, but I don't see how I would end up mistakenly retweeting white supremacists. But then again, I'm not Donald Trump, and I don't have that many followers and that many tweets. But I want to move on to the next question. This is a question he was asked in most of the interviews, but I chose the CNN version because it's actually something he's clearing up from an interview on CNN at their candidate town hall earlier in the week, talking to Anderson Cooper. And for some reason, every time he answered the question, he was really nice to Anderson Cooper. I don't know why, but he said really nice things, and I think he does in this answer. And it's basically how he said he liked the mandate, which is like saying he might have, insulted Jesus or something in the Republican Party by saying that he liked the that's Obamacare, the mandate that everyone has to buy insurance. That's like the worst thing in the world to a Republican, but he blames it on some sort of misunderstanding. They were talking over each other, though you'll see he said, I like the mandate, but he was talking about how people aren't supposed to die in the streets, and I will talk about what he may mean there and not Obamacare after I show you that clip from State of the Union on CNN this morning in answer to a question from Jake Tapper over here.
On comments you made this week at the CNN town hall about Obamacare. Take a listen.
Why would insurance company not have a pre-existing insure somebody?
Well, I like the mandate. Condition? Okay, so here's where I'm a little bit different. I don't want people dying on the streets, and I say this all the time.
So, sir, what did you mean when you said, I like the mandate?
Well, what happened is we were talking over each other, and it wasn't Anderson's fault because I think Anderson is terrific. I thought he did I thought it was a great evening, and we got tremendous reviews on it. They got tremendous ratings, which is always nice too. But what I'm talking about is very simple. There's no mandate, no mandatory anything. We're going to end Obamacare. We're going to terminate. It's going to be repealed. It's going to be replaced by something much better. First of all, we have to get rid of the lines between the states so there's competition. Okay, we have to, and we'll go healthcare savings accounts. We have there's many different ways. We're going to get great healthcare. You're going to have your own doctor, which people don't have, even though Obama promised. You're going to have your own plan, and we're going to have great healthcare. The one thing I say is this: call it whatever you want. People are not going to die in the middle of a street because they have absolutely no money and they're sick. They're not dying on the sidewalks and they're not dying on the streets if I'm president. They're just not. And as a Republican, a lot of people would say, oh, that's a terrible thing to say as a Republican. Let me tell you, every time I mention it, you know I have the biggest crowds, far bigger than Bernie. Bernie's second, I will say, but I have far bigger than Bernie. I'll make a speech in front of 20,000 people and I'll say we cannot allow people on my watch or on any watch to die in the middle of a street or on a sidewalk because they have absolutely no money. We'll get them to a hospital. We'll get them to a doctor. We have to take care of them. Do you know I get standing ovations when I say that from Republicans? And then somebody will say, he's not a conservative to say that. So you can call it whatever you want. I don't like the term mandate personally because that sort of means mandatory. I just say this. People are not going to die on the streets of any city or of any place if I'm president. And every time I say it, I get standing ovations from Republicans.
But just to clarify, you're saying now that you would not support requiring every individual in America to have health insurance. You wouldn't support that.
Yeah, that's right. And honestly, we were talking over each other. And it was my fault, not Anderson's fault, but we were talking over each other. Obviously, the answer to that is exactly that. But with that being said, we have to take care of people. We have to take care of people.
Last question, sir. We heard.
So yeah, I don't know how the we were talking over explanation actually explains Donald Trump saying I like the mandate when he doesn't really like the mandate that Anderson Cooper was talking about, which is the Obamacare mandate that everyone has to buy insurance. I think there is a mandate that he seems to be talking about, but maybe he just doesn't know the name of it, or someone should tell him. It's called, I believe the acronym is EMTALA. Well, I didn't have time to put a link down to it in the video description, but I think it's the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, something like that. I could Google it or whatever. Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, EMTALA, which basically says that if you come into a hospital and you need emergency medical treatment or you're in active labor, they have to treat you, and they don't have to treat you for free. They can bill you later, but we don't let people die in the streets. That's the mandate from EMTALA, which is a federal law in the United States. And maybe if Donald Trump knew that, he could have answered that question better. But I now want to move on to a few answers, or two answers that Donald Trump gave to Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. This first one I kind of alluded to earlier. It's Chuck Todd, and kind of sneaky, trying to get Donald Trump to say it's a three-way race now between Trump, Cruz, and Rubio. And you'll see here that Donald Trump said, oh, five-man race. They're all like really high-quality people. And even I think Chuck Todd at the end of this answer remarks on how humble Donald Trump seems to be over here.
Who joins me live from Palm Beach, Florida, Mr. Trump. Good morning and congratulations, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let me start with this idea of whether it is a three-way race. Do you believe the Republican nomination is a three-way race, or do you believe this is you on your way to getting the nomination?
Well, I think I have a big advantage, but it's certainly a three-person race, and you have a couple of other people that are very talented there too. So we have a five-man race, and I think that it's going to be, it's going to be not easy. I have a big advantage, but long way from being one.
Well, that's very humble of you this morning. Look, it's been a dramatic week.
That was pretty humble of him, you have to admit. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, that I think Donald Trump is trying to mature into the front runner, and not go so negative and be so like over the top and let the people below him fight it out for second place and third place or whatever, and fourth and fifth apparently. And so he's being more respectful and more muted and more regal. I don't know. Can Donald Trump even be regal? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I still have a couple more Trump clips before I get to that one Apple clip at the end. This is one more from Chuck Todd, more of a substantive question. It starts off actually with Donald Trump saying how the Iraq War was a big mistake, and that's one of his departures from Republican orthodoxy. That I didn't show the whole departure from Republican orthodoxy set of questions, but this is the end of that. And then also Chuck Todd asking him about this being neutral on the Israeli-Palestinian question split with Ted Cruz that I mentioned earlier and showed Hillary Clinton talking about. Well, here's Donald Trump talking about that issue. And this is the last Meet the Press clip. There's one more Donald Trump clip after this. But here's Trump on Iraq, Israel, Palestine.
But regardless, the war in Iraq was a disaster. It was probably the worst thing. If you look at the Middle East now, all started because of that horrible decision to go into Iraq. And you know what we end up with? Nothing. We spent $2 trillion. We have thousands and thousands of lives killed, just thousands, carnage. And we have wounded warriors who I love all over the place, right? And we have nothing. And Iran is now taking over Iraq. They've been trying to for many, many decades, and now they're finally taking over Iraq. As we sit here, they're taking over Iraq. We get nothing.
Let me give you one more issue where you sort of went counter to what is perceived as Republican orthodoxy, and that is on the issue of Israel and the Palestinians. You said Wednesday you wanted to be neutral in that dispute. Explain what neutral means, because some heard that in the pro-Israeli community and thinks, oh, he's going to be anti-Israel. Explain what you mean by neutral.
They want me, look, no, I'm very pro-Israel. In fact, I was the head of the Israeli Day Parade a number of years ago. I did a commercial for Netanyahu when he was getting elected. He asked me to do a commercial for him. I did a commercial for him. I am. But I don't want to be, look, the hardest thing to do is that in terms of deal, if you're a deal person, right, the ultimate deal is that deal. Israel, Palestine, if you're going to make it, that probably is the hardest deal there is to make. People are born with hatred. They're taught hatred. And I have to say, it's mostly on the one side, not on the other side. But they're taught hatred. I say this, if I'm going to be president, I'd rather be in a position, because I will try the best I can, and I'm a very good deal maker, believe me, to try and solve that puzzle. You're not going to solve it if you're going to be on one side or another. Everyone understands that. If I'm going to solve the problem, I want to go in with a clean slate. Otherwise, you're never going to get the cooperation of the other side. So that's all I'm saying.
Donald Trump, I'm going to leave it there. Again, congratulations on your big win. Stay safe on the trail. We'll be watching on Tuesday.
So that's the last clip of Donald Trump on Meet the Press, but I have one more Donald Trump clip, and I kind of teased this earlier, much earlier at the very beginning of the show, that I had one clip where Donald Trump, so this is, let me make sure, on CBS's Face the Nation, talking to John Dickerson. In this clip, apparently Donald Trump sounds like he may be going over to the 9/11 truther side. You know, I showed him talking about the Iraq War, and he said, you know, almost to the point of Bush lied and people died, and you know, that Bush is to blame for 9/11 happening, and the Bush lied, people died is in regard to the Iraq War. Well, here you'll see he talks about how Iraq, this is in response to a question about his position on the Iraq War. There was this whole timeline that actually a new quote came out from Joe Scarborough, or from Scarborough country, that was very close to the invasion, where he wasn't really that in favor of it, and he thought maybe they should have, you know, focused on terrorism and not on Iraq, which, if that's true, that's kind of like the Obama position. But the weird part about this is when he's talking about how they should have focused on terrorists, not Iraq, he says we should have focused on the people who did 9/11. I won't say their names. Maybe we'll find out someday when they release the report. Though I don't think it's really 9/11 trutherism. I'll explain what I think he means after I show that final Donald Trump clip for the broadcast over here.
Your position on the Iraq War, you've referred to that a lot. This week, everybody's kind of gone through the things you said. It seems like it was a lot more muted, your opposition to the war. Everybody knows when you say something, it's pretty clear what you mean. On Iraq, it was a little bit more muddled than you've been making it seem.
Well, John, you have to understand, first of all, I wasn't a politician. I had no even thought of being a politician. So nobody even talked to me about the war. Nobody said, should we do the war, should we not? It's not like now where every day you're being asked questions about things. And I spoke with Howard Stern, who's a friend of mine, on his show. And, you know, this was many, many months before, and he was talking about it. I said, yeah, I don't know. You know, I was thinking about it, but I didn't even think about it. And then when the war started, and actually Joe Scarborough called yesterday and put something out where it basically is on my side. And that was early on, and that was before the fact, and it was very early on. I guess he interviewed me years ago at the very beginning. And that was just put out yesterday evening, and I thank Joe for that. But look, I was against it, and I was against it very early, and we shouldn't have been in there. And I think it is probably, perhaps the worst mistake we've ever made. First of all, they didn't knock down the World Trade Center, okay? It wasn't Iraq. It was, you know, no reason to go into of lives, wounded warriors who I love all over the place. And here's the other part. Iran is taking over Iraq. They've wanted it for decades and decades and decades. They're taking it over. As you sit there and as I sit here, they are going in, they're taking over, and they just walk in and they can do whatever they want. They've essentially already taken it over.
Last week when the Pope...
So didn't that sound kind of like 9/11 trutherism from Donald Trump? But, you know, we'll have to wait for them to release the report as to who it was. I won't say who it was, but actually there's this like classified part of the 9/11 report that is about Saudi Arabia. So I think he may have been talking about Saudi Arabia, not like no Building 7 inside job stuff there. But I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I have one more topic, one more clip I want to play for you. So a big topic that was only covered on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos was this fight between Apple and FBI and the FBI over whether Apple has to write a new operating system for the iPhone that disables the part where if you put in the wrong code 10 times, it erases the data. They want to like write a whole new program that can be used on any iPhone. That's the issue, which I'm kind of like telling you the issue that they don't completely explain in this clip. It starts with a little introduction of various officials talking about encryption and the problem of encryption, and then Apple's lawyer Ted Olsen, a conservative Republican who like represented in Bush v. Gore, he represented Bush, but then he like worked with the Gore lawyer David Boies to fight for marriage equality to the Supreme Court. Anyway, now he's representing Apple against the FBI in the final clip for tonight over here.
We are seeing many more people involved in terrorism investigations using peer-to-peer communications, specifically encrypted communications. It does give us grave concern.
On your smartphone today, on your iPhone, there's likely health information, there are intimate conversations with your family, and you should have the ability to protect it. And the only way we know how to do that is to encrypt it.
Apple and Google are their own sheriffs. They're acting like teenagers, saying, no one can tell me what to do.
That battle between Apple and the FBI ramped up big time this week when the FBI asked a judge to force Apple to help them unlock the iPhone of the San Bernardino terrorist. It has set off a national debate on privacy and security, could go all the way to the Supreme Court. And we're joined now by the lawyer who will be making Apple's case, Ted Olsen. Mr. Olsen, thank you for joining us this morning. And, you know, the Justice Department, as you know, had some pretty tough words for Apple in its court filing, said this is not about privacy and security, but Apple's concern for, quote, its business model and public brand marketing strategy. How do you respond?
Well, in the first place, I have to say that we have the greatest respect for the Justice Department and the FBI for their goals and their motivations, and we would hope that we would get the same respect and understanding back. This is an extremely important debate about privacy, civil liberties, and so forth. We want, and Apple has helped the FBI in this investigation in every way the law required, but it has to draw the line at recreating code, changing its iPhone, putting its engineers and creative talents to destroy the iPhone as it exists, Apple has a responsibility to maintain the trust and faith of millions of people who have depended upon Apple to produce a product that protects their privacy, their intimate personal life. This is a Pandora's box. We're not just talking about one magistrate. There are hundreds of magistrates. There are hundreds of other courts. And there's no limit to what the government could require Apple to do if it succeeds this way. We're before a judge. The judge hasn't decided yet. We're filing briefs. There will be arguments. And this is a process that even the FBI director has recognized that it's important national debate. The law does not require Apple to do what the FBI is asking so far. Congress hasn't addressed this issue. And Apple is adhering to the trust of its millions of
how far, Mr.
iPhone
Olsen,
purchases.
how far does this principle extend?
So I pretty much gave away that I'm on Apple's side before I showed the clip, but I thought Ted Olsen did a good job, and he did more there. I didn't show his whole interview. I thought ABC, they followed him with this law enforcement guy from New York, who I'm not taking clips from, but I thought it was a little biased towards the law enforcement side. You can let me know what you think about the whole issue. I really got to finish up the show. I appreciate all of you who supported my last video by sharing it and giving it a thumbs up. I know I have a bunch of new subscribers. Hopefully I'll be able to keep live streaming and giving you videos over 15 minutes in length after I have this confrontation with CBS I talked about at the beginning. If you want to help me out as a patron, I have a link down in the video description. I really appreciate almost 70 people give me over $400 a month to support my videos, and that helps when I don't get monetized, as happened on last week's video. If you go and look, no monetization anymore. And there's also like a little eye up here where you can give me a direct donation through YouTube fan funding. Hopefully I'll be back somewhere between like next Thursday night and next Friday afternoon to do a live clip roundup on the last Republican debate before the Nevada caucuses on the Republican side. And then I'll be back next Sunday somewhere around 5 p.m., give or take an hour Pacific time, which is Greenwich Mean Time minus 8 hours. I appreciate, I had over 300 people watching, I think, at some point, and I've been reading your live comments, keeping me company while I play the clips. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of my viewers on the recorded shows. Please give it a thumbs up and share it and leave your comments to let me know that you support my work, even if you can't support it financially. And until next time, I guess I'll be seeing you all around the internet.